Everyone, welcome back to Lincoln Journal Star's Life in the Red podcast. The trifecta, we're back. Luke Mullin, Wilson Moore, Amie Just, breaking down all things Nebraska football. We have a lot of transfer portal business to talk about, a lot of stuff going on in other sports. Amie was there for the volleyball spring match. We've got men's basketball transfer portal, softball and baseball, really important series as well. So today, this is our last three-person episode, but we got a lot to bring to you, so I hope you enjoy what we have. And let's just get started with football. We had the NFL draft go on this last weekend. Two Huskers were picked. O'Shawn Mathis went number 189 overall, sixth round pick to the LA Rams. Trey Palmer, 2 picks later, he goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A little surprising, don't you think, how Trey didn't get picked first, but maybe the round he got picked into?
Yeah, I thought he was going to go higher than that, but the NFL draft is really fickle. After, your first couple of picks, it's, all teams are looking out for what they need. So it's not necessarily who's the best player. It's just how things fit, what different teams prioritize. Different teams prioritize different things. Like the Saints, for example, they prioritize big athletes who were team captains and are leaders, and every team looks at different things. And so regardless of if you're a freak athlete, if you don't fit the criteria that some team wants, then you're not going to get picked by them. So it's an inexact science, but all of that to say, I was surprised that Trey went so late. I thought he would be a tail end of a day 2 pick, early day 3. But he'll prove himself with Tampa. I'm certain of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody here knows what goes into the NFL draft, it's definitely Amie. No offense to you, Wilson, or myself. But, been there, you've seen that process, obviously. And I think a big thing that you mentioned, too, it's kind of like the projection aspect. Like, you look at O'Shawn Mathis, and he didn't have a ton of sacks, but he's got a great wingspan, like really athletic. They're off the edge, good run defender. I mean, traits like that go a long way.
And he was, not playing in the right position last year. He's not a down lineman. That's just not who he is. He wasn't down in TCU when he was there and had all of the production that he had. So NFL teams look at that too, like, can we change positions? Can we move him either more outside linebacker type situation? You see that a lot. Especially guys on defense, where NFL defenses are more and more positionless. Lots of moving around, kind of like what we're going to see here at Nebraska, hopefully here soon with the install of this new defense. But I think O'Shawn and Garrett Nelson too are prime examples of guys who, if they latch on in the NFL, they'll be in a little bit of a different spot just because of the position fluidity that you see on defenses these days.
Yeah, definitely. Good point there. And you brought up Garrett Nelson. Quite a few of these, Husker seniors, graduates who didn't end up getting drafted. They were draft hopefuls, found their spot as undrafted free agents. Garrett Nelson signing with the Miami Dolphins. Heard he had a lot of interest.
He did.
A lot of teams interested in him.
11 teams, I believe, reached out to him and his agency in the free agency frenzy that happens after the draft. That's not surprising. A lot of teams are really high on Garrett. I think Miami's a good landing spot for him.
Or during the draft, allegedly.
Usually, yes, that happens. It does happen.
It's a race to talk to these guys. It happens
because you only get so much time. And everybody like in the draft room is on the phones, just like reaching out to people, figuring out who they want, because most teams only have anywhere from 10 to 18 spots usually, depending on what their roster looks like, because you get 90 for training camp. So and then active roster is 53, and then you get I believe it's still 16 for your practice squad. That could change. They moved it up a little bit during COVID to give more flexibility, because when people are sick, you need, it is what it is. And I think it's still 16. But anyway, there's not a lot of spaces to be a UDFA. And so you have to find those and act quickly. And then for everyone else who doesn't latch on with an undrafted free agent spot, then you can get an invite to mini camp. And then you can, maybe get signed from there. But that's a really hard path. It does happen, but if you don't get drafted, you want to be a UDFA because that guarantees your spot.
Definitely. You get to negotiate, pick your team, if you do have those options, as Garrett Nelson did. And a few of those other guys who found their spots, Caleb Tanner signing with the New York Jets, Travis Vokalek going to Baltimore, which that's an organization that knows how to use their tight ends. So that's a pretty good fit.
I think, of all of my favorite fits, I think that's my favorite fit. He could thrive there. They really like using their tight ends, and not just one. They like a two tight end set as well. So I think that'll be good for him.
Absolutely. And a couple other quick updates. Long snapper Brady Weiss going to the Texans, wide receiver Oliver Martin to the Jaguars, and linebacker Chris Kolarvik to the Bears. Those guys all finding their spots as UDFAs, and a couple former Huskers too, worth updating you on. Former quarterback at Nebraska, Adrian Martinez, signed to the Detroit Lions pretty much immediately after the draft ended. So clearly they'd identified him as a guy they want to bring in, compete for that backup spot. Another guy who transferred to Kansas State, wide receiver Cade Warner, signed with the Bucs. So a little bit of a connection there. Him and Trey Palmer potentially practicing together. And a couple other transfers. Former defensive lineman Jordan Riley followed defensive line coach Tony Tuioti to Oregon, ended up as a 7th-round pick to the Giants. So congrats to him there, getting his NFL shot. And man, this is a name that brings back a lot of memories there. Tyjon Lindsey, which I can't believe he was eligible for the draft in this year, considering he debuted for the Huskers in 2017.
I was a senior in college.
Seahawks.
I was a senior in college in 2017.
This is the Mike Riley era we're getting back to here. This is ancient old stuff for Nebraska football history, but former member of the program, potentially there, going to the pros. I mean, 6-year college career, COVID, redshirt year. I mean, this stuff is all, it's trickling down. It's a lot of stuff. It's not just football. It's in all sports. So that kind of craziness is
Derek
out
Walker
there.
being, a 25-year-old college athlete, for example.
Exactly.
It happens.
So there's your NFL draft and undrafted free agent update, but we need to get into talking about the transfer portal. A lot of movement after the spring game. This is what we expected. We talked about how coaches are going to have these conversations, go over with the players what their roles can maybe be. And at our last podcast, Richard Torres and Victor Jones were both in the portal already. Jones, by the way, he has committed to Liberty. But big news, of course, Casey Thompson, last year's starting quarterback. He's in the transfer portal. What do we make of that?
I was shocked at first, partially because I thought, he would, stick around and compete. And also he'd been posting a bunch of photos of him in his Nebraska jersey on Instagram. So maybe I was reading way too in between the lines on that one. But it makes sense, right? He has 1 year of eligibility left. He's a competitor, and he's a good quarterback that will be able to lead a program to success. I have no doubt about that. He was in Alabama over the weekend. He did not post anything on campus, but he did post some signs on his Instagram story of the Alabama State sign. So read into that what you will. Probably was visiting with Auburn. They need a quarterback. And I think he would be a good fit there. We'll see what happens in the coming days, hours, weeks, whatever. But I wish him the best. I hate to think of what Nebraska football would have looked like without him and Trey Palmer last season.
Yeah.
A newsroom conversation I was having with somebody, we were looking just to see, okay, if the games played out exactly as they did without Casey and Trey, do they win a game? And I think the answer is no. So be happy that he was here. I liked working with Casey. I thought he was incredibly insightful every time he stepped up to the podium. It sucks that he got hurt. you wonder how different things would have been if there would have been a couple more wins in there. That maybe that Michigan game is a little bit closer, maybe not as lopsided. But yeah, I wish him the best. I hope he latches on somewhere where it works out for him, because he deserves that.
Absolutely. I'll echo your comments. I think he's just a stand-up guy. All his teammates talking about him, how dedicated he was in the film room. Not just quarterbacks, wide receivers, anybody, working with him, getting the chance to know him as a teammate. Really impressed with that. And yeah, just his play last year. I mean, we heard kind of some of the injuries he was going through, but I mean, he was dinged up all year. He was hurting, and he didn't really let that show. He was an Iron Man out there. And you kind of wonder, if he'd been healthy this spring, what the competition would have been like. But realistically, I think if you're thinking about this from the current college football landscape, you're a 6-year guy like he is, maybe not immediately thinking about NFL. I mean, maximizing your earning potential when you have that chance now via NIL. I mean, you're a veteran quarterback post spring. It's a big opportunity for him to find a new spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And just something a little more stable than what he had here. Jeff Sims came in for a reason. There was going to be a competition. And, it's Thompson found himself, I think, in a situation where he didn't want to take a risk, it seemed to me. He only, when you only have 1 year of eligibility, you don't want to spend that last year backing someone up. So he kind of, in a weird way, ended that quarterback competition prematurely. I think we're all ready for that to be a big storyline that it now isn't, but he'll go somewhere where he can contribute immediately, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, he had to do what was best for himself, and maybe, you never know. Maybe he sticks out in Nebraska. Maybe he wins the job in the fall, but the chance he could have never seen the field, and maybe that's the case at his new school too. But getting that opportunity and perhaps, getting another new shot or another new year for him, that's the motivation, we assume. So like Amie said, we wish him the best, but it does leave Nebraska in a very tough spot, which we knew Torres was in the portal. Logan Smothers entered the portal as well. So now down to just 3 scholarship quarterbacks: Jeff Sims, Chubba Purdy, Heinrich Harburg. That quarterback, deluge, there was too many quarterbacks and now too few?
Yes, there are too few. I mean, just look at last season. Casey plays, gets hurt. Chubba plays, gets hurt. Smothers plays, gets hurt. The last drive against Michigan, they had in Jarrett Sinak, who is also in the transfer portal as well. So not great. Quarterbacks get hurt. That's the name of the game, especially now that, Nebraska's going to be presumably running the ball a lot more. That opens yourself up for more injuries. So having 3 scholarship quarterbacks worries me. But maybe they'll figure it out. But yeah, that's, I don't like that.
Yeah, I would have felt better if Smothers had maybe stayed. It's easy to understand another new coaching staff who's maybe looking for something different in a quarterback. It makes a lot of sense for him, but he knows how to come in tough situations. We saw last year too. I mean, he made plays when his name was called on sometimes, and dealing with a shoulder injury too. So I'll be interested to see if he finds another spot quickly. It's interesting, all these players, with Nebraska being over that scholarship limit, there's a lot of tough decisions to be made there, but is there potential to return at all? I think Smothers might be the guy that you look at and say, if a couple weeks stretch on, you never know. But that stuff is out of our purview. I'm not making that decision. Somebody else is, Matt Rule probably. So, but that's the situation as it is. And there were big departures at other positions too. We need to go to the defense, I think, for this one. Stephon Wynn contributed last year, expected him to be one of those 3 down linemen, and he hits the portal.
Yeah, and just a big blow to, I think, Nebraska's interior line. I think we kind of talked about this last week. They have pass rushers beyond Ty Robinson, who's going to line up, over the center on the inside of the line is a little more up in the air, especially now that Wynn's gone. He was going to be a guy who got a lot of those snaps, and now it's a little less clear who's going to be one of those 3 down linemen.
Yeah, that was, other than Casey entering the portal, that was the one that, up until A.J. Allen entered the portal, that was the one that surprised me the most. Nebraska is not deep there at all. And, he's an experienced guy, and I thought he would, fit right in, take a majority of the snaps there. But yeah, it surprised me for sure.
I agree. And I think you have to look to Elijah Judy or maybe Raquan Buckley, to make that step up, play there on the interior, because those guys, they had their chance, and Stephon Wynn seemed to have a really good spring too. So we'll be interested to see how that shakes out. And as you mentioned, A.J. Allen, who maybe, there's a crunch there running back. There's a lot of options, scholarship guys and guys who the coaching staff likes. But Allen, the potential was there. We saw that last year, but tough injury. He was recruited by Brian Applewhite, who of course moved on. You have to figure that's part of the equation, and he still has 4 years left. So he's got a lot of potential and future ability ahead of him.
Yeah, I really liked AJ. I thought that he could be a contributor here. One of the things that I like about the running back room is there's no carbon copies of anybody. They're all different. They can all be used in different situations that would be beneficial for them. And so I really liked the potential that he had. I liked the way he looked last season before he hurt his collarbone. But yeah, he'll latch on somewhere. I'm sure of that.
Definitely. Tough runner, good player, hitting the portal there. And a few of the other players, just to share, wide receiver Sean Hardy, cornerback Braxton Clark, and two safeties, Noah Pola-Gates and Jalil Martin. Kind of expected that. We've heard there are a lot of players there, wide receiver, defensive back. Some names had to go, and those are the guys who choose to enter the portal. You look at Pola-Gates and Martin, highly rated recruits, but just didn't get on the field that much the last couple of years. Pola-Gates, Martin, just 1 year, I believe. So both of them looking for new homes, and all of this kind of goes as part of the plan to solve Nebraska's scholarship crunch. 85-man scholarship limit. Our current scholarship tracker, we have them just 3 over right now after the portal closed, but still some things that happen. Players can go off scholarship, retire from football. There's a lot of different options there, and we expect that to get solved, maybe other transfer portal entries that hadn't been released yet. That stuff can come out in the next couple of weeks, but they're close. They're almost there.
Yeah. And, it's just a necessary evil of the situation. You can be as far over in spring as you want, but you've got to get it figured out by the time classes start in August.
Maybe some tough conversations to get there as well. So that will be going on from the Nebraska football coaching staff. And as these scholarship players leave out, you start to wonder about the depth a little bit. And something else that always happens, late spring is you find guys who might be going to JUCO, who might not have a spot yet there on a team, and identify if they can bring them in as walk-ons. And two walk-on additions to share, former Omaha Scud and Wyoming quarterback Caden Becker. He's joining the program as a fullback / tight end, kind of a hybrid there. We've seen a couple guys, Janier and Bonner, for example, fill that role. I like that a lot. Saw him play a little bit in high school. Had really good athleticism there as a quarterback, kind of a runner type. But I thought it was really interesting, too. He went to Wyoming, and Fremont Bergen quarterback, one of the all-time greats here in the state, Koa McIntyre, he was heading out to Wyoming, too. But the Wyoming coaching staff liked Becker so much at quarterback that they had McIntyre play defense. And ultimately, it didn't work out. But Wyoming was very, very high on Becker there as a quarterback. So interesting to see how Nebraska will make the most of his athletic potential. Trick play, maybe. I'll throw it out there. If he's there on the field, time will tell. And the other one, an Iowa high school offensive lineman, David Borchers, was set to go to junior college. He will be walking on, helping fill out that depth there along the offensive line. So that's kind of the roster update. We'll see maybe more to come in the next couple of weeks. But again, those big transfer portal losses, Casey Thompson officially in the portal. We'll see where he ends up. But that's all we got for football right now. But we need to move to something very important. Amie, you enjoyed a weekend there in Central City.
I did.
I will say I just watched on TV. You were there in person, but it seemed like a really special atmosphere for the spring match.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. It was really, really loud in there. I wore my earplugs to save my ears. But it got up to I think like 105 decibels in there, which is really loud. Central City did a bang up job with that. Showing out, and granted, it wasn't just Central City people who came, but the school really did a great job of running the event. I thought, it couldn't have gone any better, honestly. I'm like speechless. I'm like lost for words at how cool it was, just to see a community rally around a team like that. It was super special.
Definitely. I mean, that's probably the highlight. You take in the atmosphere of the day, the experience, but the play on the court too. Ooh. I'll say the team looked good, but you look at the freshman in particular, Harper Murray. I mean, she was just swinging it, and you could tell she's got a powerful swing behind her.
Yeah, she's going to be incredibly fun to watch this fall. The way that she hits the ball, it sounds different to me. Yeah, I would hate to play against her or even be against her in practice. I would imagine she's probably going to start, just based on the way that she had played the other day. Yeah, she's fantastic. Two other freshmen really, really stood out to me. Bergen Riley, she came in midway through the match and I really liked the way that she commanded the floor, ran the offense. Thought she looked really good out there. And then Lainey Choboy in the back. She's like 5'3", but she was all over the place, made a SportsCenter top 10 worthy play, in getting a dig, saving a point. Yeah, they're really good. What's awesome for them is that they're going to continue to get more work together because they get to go international this year. So they're going to Brazil over the summer. You can go international for a training trip once every 4 years. And so that's going to continue to help them with their chemistry. And yeah, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this fall.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Choboy too, because she was flying around there. And if you look at like last year's team, you think if Lexi Rodriguez went down, I mean, that would leave such a huge hole. And don't get me wrong, I mean, a player of her experience, her caliber, there's no replacing that altogether. But Choboy looks like she's going to be a special defensive specialist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When she and Lexi are on the court at the same time, it can be pretty powerful. At one point, the back row was Lexi, Lainey, and another defensive specialist who comes in and serves sometimes, and Macy Bosiger, and it was just really kind of funny.
The defense is off the charts.
Seeing the three of them who are under 5'5" back there, the short person and me thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
so.
Drink it in, relish it, and I'm not gonna overreact to this spring match too much, but you look at the 2021 class that Nebraska brought in: Lindsey Krause, Allie Batenhorst, Lexi Rodriguez, Kennedy Orr, really special, contributors at all the positions. I mean, this year's class that they have coming in, these 2023 freshmen, looks really special. So excited to see how they develop, how they can get them some playing time, work them into the rotation as Cook did, 2 years ago with that class. And the other new addition, Merritt Beeson, she's an experienced player. You kind of expect that. Looked very capable there at right side hitter, as you expect. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She's a really talented opposite. I think she has fit in seamlessly when there's so much roster turnover. So this team has 6 new players, 6, with the addition of 5 freshmen and Merritt Beeson. Things can go off the rails, but I don't think that's happened at all. I think all of them, outside of Kennedy, participating in beach has helped their chemistry. The freshmen early enrolling so they can participate in this has really helped with their chemistry. They haven't really missed a beat, it looks like, from the public things that we've seen. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how this summer goes for them, how the early part of the fall goes. Lindsey Krause is moving a little bit from opposite to outside hitter, so see how she can do that position switch. But yeah, I'm really excited for what they're going to be able to do this fall.
Yeah, great point with how much they've been able to work together already. The amount of freshmen, coming in as early enrollees, that's really impressive by them too, to graduate, half a semester early and to get in and fit in right away as they did. And certainly I thought the chemistry was already very strong there. And as you said, that trip to Brazil could do nothing but really help it there as well. So there is your volleyball update. We have more updates to share. Men's basketball, a transfer portal going on there as well. A lot of transfer portal talk today. But, they were hosting a lot of players, looking to bring a lot in. One that Nebraska does miss out on is former Millard North and Gonzaga guard Hunter Salas. Chose Wake Forest instead, but still a pretty good week in the portal for the Huskers. Starting on Monday, they landed a transfer from Iowa point guard Aaron Eulis. Pretty good contributor for Iowa last 2 years. Played 22 and a half minutes a game last year. 6.1 points, 2.1 assists per game, 2 seasons of eligibility remaining, and really helps kind of figure out some of that point guard stuff. You got Jamarcus Lawrence, who you expect to, contribute there as well. But having a veteran guy who knows Big Ten basketball, that can only mean good things, right?
Yeah, and nothing against Aaron. Nebraska went 0 of 5 before landing him on their point guard, their quest for a point guard.
Yep.
I say 0 of 5, even though it was 0 of 4 for guys outside the program. Point guard Karan McPherson, who was with the program, has left. So that's where I get the 0 of 5 from. But I think that, he could fit really well. He is a true point guard, so not the Sam Griesel, Emmanuel Bandamel 7 point guard situation that we saw last year. He's definitely going to need to step up, but I think he will, just because the situation's going to be a little bit different. He's going to get a lot more playing time, I presume. It is, May. We're talking about basketball. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how that's going to go. Hopefully he is received well. Like, the team's going to be fine, but, fans probably don't like Iowa very much. So hopefully they can put his past aside.
I think once he's wearing red, I think
it's going to be fine.
Figure it out. Yeah. But certainly he's a big addition because they needed a veteran guard, somebody who's kind of been there, done that. And they've also been looking to add a lot of guys in the post. Got one in Rink Mast a couple weeks ago. And Tuesday, next edition became former Lincoln North Star standout Josiah Alec. Spent 3 years at University of Missouri, Kansas City, followed by 1 year at New Mexico, and also the older brother of Nebraska volleyball's Beck Alec. So pretty cool moment for the Alec family there.
Yeah, Josiah was at the volleyball game match scrimmage this weekend. So it's exciting that is not just going to be a one-time thing for him.
Definitely.
He's going to get to see his sister play a lot more, which is cool. Coming home to play your final season is definitely something that, was special for Sam Griesel, and I would imagine is going to be very special for Josiah, especially since, his sister is here. I think it's going to be fun. But on the court, I think he fits really well. Super experienced. He's played more than 100 games. And he's really good on the boards, which they need, especially when you lose a guy like Derek Walker.
Absolutely. He's not like the bulkiest. He's kind of more of a skinnier post, but I think he's got pretty good moves too. From what I've seen, I watched him more at UMKC. Can't say I saw that much of him at New Mexico there last year, but really good rebounder. I think crafty player, veteran too. I don't think he's going to come in with crazy, ego or expectations. He knows he's going to be a role player there, contribute where he can, and just filling out that big man depth, goes a long way. Another big addition for them there. So we'll see. I think that's probably it for transfer portal pickups for them.
Maybe.
They got one scholarship maybe to work with.
So everything just kind of hinges on Casey as we wait for that. And he doesn't have to make a decision until the end of the month. So kind of in a holding pattern for the most part right now as to how that'll happen. Nebraska's still recruiting guys that are in the transfer portal. But we'll see.
This stuff will carry over till summer. We will see again. May 31st deadline there for Keisei Tominaga to potentially withdraw from the NBA draft there and return to Nebraska. So there's our men's basketball update. And finally, we're here for some spring sports. Actually, the sports that we are in season for. Again, we have football and volleyball kind of, wrapping up those spring preseason stuff. But softball was a very important series. We talked about it, how Northwestern, they're this top team there in the Big Ten. Knew it was going to be tough, but did you think that a sweep was maybe on the cards? I mean, that was a pretty tough shakeout there for Nebraska.
Yeah, not just that they were swept, but the way it happened, I think, was pretty much a nightmare of a scenario. 22-4 on Friday was just ugly, but then Saturday, a 4-run lead in the 7th inning, Sunday, a 5-run lead in the 5th inning, gave up big rallies to Northwestern both times. Just an ugly way to lose both games. Rough way to get eliminated from the already slim chance of a Big Ten regular season title. And now they're on kind of shakier ground. Nebraska is. They're clinging on to that 4th place spot, which is where they need to be for to get a bye in the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State right behind them, coming to town this weekend. So it'll really come down to these last few games for seeding in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that 22-4 loss, that kind of jumps off the page to you, like, what the heck happened there? And, you see Courtney Wallace, she gets dinged for one of those 11-run innings too. So, when your top pitcher isn't necessarily able to produce, that's going to be tough. She did bounce back a little bit, I think, in those next 2 games, but really good Northwestern offense. And like you mentioned, this is really, really an important series coming up here against Ohio State because Nebraska 12-8 there in Big Ten play. As you mentioned, top 4 teams get those first-round byes in the single elimination conference tournament. So it's in their hands. Probably 1 win is good. 2 wins, I think, secures their spot. So really just got to win the series at home and get that first-round bye for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a weird team to figure out. This just because I think what really got exposed against Northwestern was that lack of pitching behind Courtney Wallace. She had thrown 130, 140 pitches on Saturday. Rhonda Revelle went to her again Sunday, and she just clearly didn't have it. She gave up 5 runs in that 5th inning before a 2-hour rain delay. And I think if you were looking at a blueprint of what could potentially doom this team as we get deeper into postseason play, it's the lack of a reliable, really third pitcher behind Courtney Wallace and Sarah Harness. Nebraska just doesn't have anyone they can rely on with Caitlin Kinney injured.
Absolutely. So you'll be there. You'll be keeping a close eye on things. So make sure to stay tuned to Wilson for all those updates. Again, very important series for softball, final series of the regular season here at home hosting Ohio State. And, we kind of talking about the conference tournament for softball. Well, the baseball team's also gotten itself into a little bit of a pickle in terms of its conference tournament seeding. Just quickly to recap what happened last week. Finally got the best of an in-state team, beat Omaha 6-3 on Tuesday, but turned around and lost to South Dakota State. And then a really, really tough Friday loss. Fell behind early, rallied all the way to take their lead, and then blew a 9th inning lead there. Minnesota won that one 7-5. A 5th loss in 6 games for Nebraska. Credit them for turning it around, winning the series. Bats showed up there on Saturday and Sunday finally, so they got the series win, but puts them in a really tough spot. They've lost a lot of games that they really shouldn't be losing. The RPI continued to fall a lot last week, where they were already far out of the equation of any, at-large bid. But in terms of this Big Ten tournament landscape, they head on the road to Maryland this week, which is the best team in the Big Ten, the only top 25 team. So really tough competition, as good as it gets there for the baseball team. And in a worst-case scenario, if Nebraska gets swept this week, things would be very, very uncomfortable for them in their last 2 Big Ten series, because right now, 9-6 in the conference, tied for 3rd place, only half a game out of 2nd place, so they're in a good spot. But top 8 make the tournament. Teams like Purdue, Rutgers, Illinois are like 2 games, 1.5 games behind Nebraska. So I think as they look ahead to this Maryland series, I think got to win at least one. That's just got to be the goal for me, because if they get swept, it's going to be a really stressful, tough 2 final weeks.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not quite like last season.
Certainly, yeah.
And the
disappointment,
of that.
Definitely. And so I think you got to look at, hopefully the Friday starter, Emmett Olson, can bounce back, because he had a really good run of starts there. I think, in March, April, he started off hot too, but Minnesota dinged him, and he had a couple of rough starts before that. Jace Kaminska turned things around, their Saturday starter, in this last one against Minnesota. So, again, really tough matchups. It's a good, hard-hitting Maryland team. So, we'll see what happens. Also, they will host North Dakota State there on Wednesday. Chance to get right, maybe get their heads in the right place, a little warm up there. But, as we've seen, some of these Wednesday games have tripped them up. So that's where things stand for the Nebraska baseball team. Much like Wilson will be keeping an eye on softball, I'll be seeing what happens with that series as well. So make sure to stay tuned, journalstar.com. We'll have all the updates for that. And I think that's pretty much all we've got for updates today. But one quick order of business before we sign off for this one. We're winding our way through the end of this spring season. The end of the athletic calendar, so to speak, for Nebraska athletics is coming to a close. Don't worry, we've still got plenty of Life in the Red episodes to come in the next couple weeks. Wilson and I, again, as I said, will be following softball and baseball, but we got to say goodbye to Amie, at least for
a
the next
little bit.
Weeks.
I'm not leaving, y'all. I'm not leaving.
Not permanently. Don't worry.
I'm going on vacation next week, and since I don't cover baseball and softball, I don't want to be dead weight on the pod, so I'm going to let these two do their thing. It's going to be fun to listen to.
Yeah, enjoy your time in the sun, in the mountains, wherever you'll be, on the beach, wherever it'll be. Well, Wilson and I are stuck here podcasting.
In Nebraska.
Yeah, so great. But anyway, I think that's all we got today. Again, appreciate all of you repeat listeners, viewers. Your support means quite a lot. And once again, we'll be back at you next week. We'll have all the Nebraska updates for you. Thanks for listening to today's Life in the Red podcast.